All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Adventure with Roger. Today we're going to be taking a look at the New World closed beta, and there's about 4 hours left in it, and I just wanted to give some final thoughts on some of the stuff. I got about 80 to 85 hours played now. My character's level 32. I've done most of the main storyline that I can possibly do on my character. I've been rolling a fire mage slash healer. I've been doing a lot of dungeon running, a lot of crafting, a lot of harvesting, a lot of gathering, a lot of all that good crafting stuff that comes along with it. I've got my character pretty much mid-max as much as I can. Right here, I just want to show you my gear real quick and some of the stuff that I found out that's going on with the crafting system as of right now that really kind of bugs the shit out of me. So we're going to get into it. First up, let me just say that the faction merchant gear, it doesn't matter what faction you're in. Once you get to a certain level, the faction merchant gear is almost the best stuff you can get. I mean, the stuff that the best tiered stuff that drops inside the dungeons is a smidgen better. Maybe +1 on certain stats. It's kind of hard to explain, but we're going to get into it a little bit here. I just want to show you that this is the gear right here. So the Reinforced Marauder Gladiator's Jacket of the Priest is what I bought on my faction merchant, and the Amarine Scout Cloak is actually gear that I was able to craft after I forged a key to get into the dungeon, and then I got materials that I needed inside the dungeon to be able to craft this scout coat. Now there's quite a few things that I find just terribly wrong with this, and I want to talk about them. And so the first thing is that the crafted stuff is way worse than the faction merchant stuff, except unless you're trying to be very specific on what you want to do. So as you can see here, the jacket, the pants have intelligence focus. The jacket has intelligence focus. The shoes, the gloves, and the hat all have intelligence and focus on them, which is a good thing because that raises my intelligence for the fire staff and my focus for the healing staff. So I can switch back and forth between doing damage and healing on this particular set really well because it raises both those stats versus some of the stuff that I crafted for myself, which all has intelligence and focus on it. But some of the stuff that I just found randomly, like random drops like this shield, has intelligence and dexterity on it, but most shields don't have intelligence, so that was a good find. This particular helmet that I crafted has intelligence and focus on it, but as you can see, it has 2 more intelligence and 4 less focus, which makes the hat arguably worse. And it's also -2 sockets, which doesn't give me the +1% of physical damage absorption, which the faction merchant does give me, and this refreshing ability, which reduces my max cooldowns by 1.9%. Both those are really good passive things that come on this particular headpiece bought by the faction merchant. But the thing that bugs me the most about the crafting and what's going on is that to craft the stuff that's even close to the faction merchant, I have to go grind it out inside of dungeons for literally hours and hours, if not days on end, to get the components that I need to be able to craft these items, which are called coagulated bloods and sparkling bone dust. Now once I get 10 of one of these, doesn't matter 10 of these or 10 of these, I can then go over to the cloth crafter table and start crafting some of this stuff. Now the reason I'm wearing these green items for my armor and not the faction merchant armor, even though the faction merchant is obviously better, is because my intelligence stat goes up +2 for every one of these I have on. So I'm getting 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 extra intelligence plus another 2 because the shield has 2 intelligence. So it has 2 more intelligence for each piece I have on, and then some of one of these, I forget which one. The pants right here just has straight up 13 intelligence, which is much better for a fire staff user than this one, which is 5 intelligence and 8 focus. Because if I'm trying to be just a straight up DPS and not a straight up healer, I want to have 13 more intelligence instead of just 5 intelligence, which is a huge increase. Another thing that I find that really bugged not only me, but a lot of the guys I was playing with throughout this last week is that the stuff that drops inside the dungeons, and you have to understand, to get into a dungeon, you have to craft these things called tuning orbs. So you have to buy a chisel off the faction merchant, which is at least 500 tokens. Then you have to collect all the different types of motes that are required to craft this tuning orb, and it's a bunch of different materials that you have to get. And you also have to have 10 of these corrupted slivers as well. So the corrupted slivers come from closing the corrupted things that are all over the map that look like this, corrupted portals. There's big ones, there's small ones, there's 5-man ones, there's ones that you can do by yourself. Once you get good enough, you can definitely do the 5-man ones or the 3-man ones by yourself. It just takes you a little bit longer. These tier 1s, the ones that say recommended level 25, and that just take an Azoth staff tier 1 to close, they don't give you the shards. And if they do, it's gotta be super rare that it does, because I've closed about 100 of those and I've never gotten just a shard off of doing one of these small ones. So you need to do these recommended player 5 ones to get the shards. So just to make one key for one dungeon run, yes, you only need one key to take 5 people, but just to make one key is quite the chore. It's definitely something where you have to go out, you have to be harvesting materials to get the motes, you have to close the corrupted things to get the shards, and then you have to get the chisel off the faction merchant, then you have to craft your tuning orb. So you have to go through tons and tons of shit just to get into the dungeon, and then to get the crafting materials to craft stuff that's not as good as the faction merchant. I think it should be the opposite of that. In my personal opinion, I think it should be the corruption areas that you go close give you the crafting materials to craft this basically T3 stuff, so that you have good enough armor to get into the dungeon, and then once you get into the dungeon you have a chance of getting an item that's better than the stuff that you crafted to begin with. I think that these crafting materials like these coagulated bloods and these sparkling bone dust should be kind of like your gateway to being able to do the dungeon to begin with, and then inside the dungeon you should be getting better stuff because it's harder content. It shouldn't be that you can just go grind for a few hours, maybe a day or two, get all your faction gear, and then be able to skip the dungeon content completely. It just puts a really bad taste in your mouth. It's kind of completely ass backwards, and I don't really like the way it works. It felt to me like I was doing the dungeons just because they were kind of fun, but I'm not really getting anything out of doing them except experience and hanging out with some guys to clear some content, which we can already do in the elite outdoor dungeons basically, and get, in my opinion, better stuff, because those elite areas that are outside dungeons give you the potions, the better potions that you'd have to get a bunch of materials to craft, or you'd have to buy them off the faction merchant, when you can just basically kill 1 to 3 mobs and basically guarantee that you're going to get one of these really good potions for healing yourself that give you just better healing, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Another thing that really bugged us about our dungeon running is that almost every single one of these items, these blue weapons right here, I saved quite a few of them. I got rid of some of them. I just salvaged them because they're just taking up so much space after a while. After running the same dungeon like 10 times, you've got so much of this stuff, you just don't know what to do with it. And you just don't have time because obviously the beta is coming to an end. You can't raise every single weapon you want to in the amount of time that you have to play. So I just kept a few that I wanted to show you guys. And one of the things that really bugs us is that all of them are bound to the player. So even if I'm running the same dungeon with the same 5 guys because they're all friends of mine, I can't trade to them any of this stuff. And I must have ran Amaranth Dungeon about 15 times and I never got the fire staff. I was waiting and waiting and waiting. Every one of my buddies got the fire staff, and I was just waiting and waiting and waiting. I never got it the whole time. I ended up buying this green fire staff off of the open marketplace because it had 345 gear score, which is about the best one I could find. It had 98 fire damage, and the biggest one for me is that it had 16 intelligence. The fire staffs that I was using, like this one for instance, is really close to the one I was using for a very long time. Has a gear score of 325, so it's 20 less gear score, 4 less fire damage, and 1 less intelligence. And this green staff right here that I bought off the marketplace just dropped somewhere. Who knows where it dropped? And somebody put it on the market for 100 coins, and I sniped it up, and I've been using it for like 5 levels. So I don't think that you guys thought it out very well as far as which gear should drop where. And I think everything is backwards right now. And I think you guys have a lot of work to do. Because if I can run the same dungeon 15 times in one day, not get the fire staff that I want, and buy a green one off the dungeon, off the marketplace for 100 coins, and this so-called hard content that you guys developed isn't dropping a fire staff for the guy that wants to use nothing but a fire staff, I think it's god-awful. I think it's terrible. I think you need to reevaluate the gear that's in the dungeons. I think you need to reevaluate the whole key system. I actually kind of like it that you have to have a key to get into dungeons, because that way people can't just run the same dungeon like 100 times in one day because they need to go farm these key fragments. But at the same time, once you get in there, you run it with your buddies. Like, I had a buddy that really wanted this axe, this Darkness Defined axe. I had like 5 of them at one point, and I couldn't trade one to him because it's bind on pickup. I had another buddy that really wanted this Crusher's Craze axe. I got like 5 of those to drop and never got one fire staff. I got the Ice Gauntlet. I got the really, really good healing staff here. The T3 one that has the health, the constitution, and the focus on it. Which if you're just a straight up healer and healing is all you want to do, that's exactly what you want. You want constitution and focus. I got this really cool healing hatchet, which is constitution and focus, that you could use it as an offhand. I think it's really amazing. I was really tempted to use it and just go healer after a while because I just wasn't getting the damage gear that I wanted to be able to use the fire staff. And when I first started out, I didn't play a mage. I played tank, so I was using sword and shield the whole time. And I got to the point where I thought it was just way too easy. Like, I just walk up to anything I wanted, I just block the attacks, and it would die. And it was so boring. After a while, I was like, this is not fun. So I switched to mage. It made the game more challenging, but after like 25 hours of just grinding the same dungeon and the same content and not getting the gear that I expected to get, and everybody else getting the gear that I wanted and them not being able to trade it to me, was just terrible. So I got really burnt out on it. Also, guys, I have just tons and tons of jewels, tons and tons of food, and these crafting mods. I think the crafting mods are completely pointless, guys. When you're crafting something and you just use the Azoth, you get better stats just using the Azoth by adding 15 or 30 Azoth to the crafting itself. You get way better stats than you would by using these crafting mods. So I just have loads and loads of crafting mods sitting in my bank, not doing anything. They're terrible and they're completely pointless right now. So you guys need to figure that out as well. All of my friends agree with me on this. I grinded dungeons with the same 3 to 5 guys the whole week, and we all have an entire storage shed full of crafting mods, and we were just waiting for a time when we thought we should start using them. And every single one of us decided that just using the Azoth gave us better stats on everything we crafted than any of these crafting mods did. So that's something you guys need to work on. I think it's just god awful as well. I think that another thing I had written down is that the corruption portals, I don't see enough of a reason to want to do these corruption portals. After grinding dungeons for a while, especially the lower level ones, the pre-level 30 dungeons, I don't see any reason. Like, if I was going to do this all over again, let's say you guys didn't change any of this stuff and the game came out and I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't do any corruption portals. I wouldn't do any of the dungeons. All I would do was sit in town, grind the faction merchant, get my faction gear, and then do the main quest storyline, and then do endgame stuff. I would sit on the town board where you have all the little quests like all day long and just complete those, because that's by far the best experience in the game. There's almost, except for the fun factor, there's almost no reason to want to close these corruption portals, because all they're going to give you is the corruption fragments to make the dungeon keys. And like I said, the dungeons just aren't worth it. You do get blue items in the dungeons, but if you just leveled up, like you run the dungeon maybe one time to see what it's all about, and then you just continue leveling up and until you get to 60 and then worry about it, none of that gear means anything. And that's another problem that the game has, is that once you have an item, you never have to worry about getting another item because it's never going to wear out. And that's another inherent problem with the currency of the game. Let's say I go into a dungeon, or I'm just out farming in the open world. I get a really kick-ass fire staff and I don't need a fire staff and I want to sell it. There's no merchant that gives me a baseline of what that fire staff is worth. So you go into the marketplace, you have one guy that might be selling it for 5,000 coins and one guy that's selling it for 5 coins because he doesn't realize what it's worth or whatever. And there's no merchant in town that gives him a baseline that he can sell things to. Let's say he had a merchant in town that you could sell the fire staff to for coins, like an NPC. He tries to sell it to the NPC and he finds out the NPC's buying it for 500 coins. He's not going to then go to the auctioneer or the marketplace and sell it for 100. He's going to sell it for above 500, and the guy that has his up for sale for 5,000 is going to sell it for less than that, obviously, because it's not worth 10 times more than what the NPC merchant is selling it for. And it doesn't have to be an NPC market. It just has to be that where there's some kind of baseline that tells people how much things might be worth. Another thing is that I look at this game like they want it to be kind of like a player-driven economy, but it's not a player-driven economy because the weapons and armor that you're using, they lose durability, but you can fix them. So there's no reason to ever craft another one. Once you have something that you're happy with, there's no reason to ever craft the same item again because it never wears out. There's no looting system in PvP where you can loot things off of other individuals. So that's another reason why once you have something, you're going to have it forever. It's not going to wear out. So right now, if someone levels up to level 60, everything that's not level 60 gear is completely worthless. Right now, things are worth things because not everyone is level 60. But once the game is out for a while, everyone hits level 60. Everything under level 60 as far as gear goes is going to be worth absolutely nothing. They're just going to be pissed it's in their bags and immediately salvage it. They're not going to try and sell it on the marketplace. They're not going to... Half of it you can't trade to other individuals at all. So it's just a really poorly set up system right now, and it needs a lot of work. You have a huge, I would say about 10% or maybe less than 10% of the entire player base of any MMO ever made actually is a hardcore PvPer. So 90% of your player base is PvE based people who want to be crafters. They want to take their time. They want to play casually. They want to make stuff and be able to put it on the market and sell it. They want to come back and see some progress made in some way with their crafting or their casual play in some way. But if you have someone that's not level 60, let's say the game's out for a year. If you have someone that's not max level and they're trying to sell like level 35 gear on the marketplace, nobody's going to buy that gear. You might want to think about, how do you make it so that people want to continue crafting things? How do you make it so that the market doesn't dwindle off and people actually buy that lower level stuff? Are you going to make it so that gear wears out? Are you going to make it so that if you die, things can break? What are you going to do to make it so that the marketplace stays relevant? Another big problem I have with the game is a major upside of the game as well, and that's the voice chat. The in-game voice chat works better than any other in-game voice chat I've ever encountered. It works really well, but at the same time, if you have it on, it's on, and if you have it off, obviously it's off. But when you do have the in-game voice chat on, you have all of these asshole toxic players running around town, and you can tell it's always the same type of individual. They sound like they're 15 years old. They're using a bunch of really awesome 4-letter words that shows their intelligence level, and you have to put up with all these assholes every time you go to town. And they're always talking shit about everybody all the time, how stupid the other people's characters look, how awesome they are, and how bad everybody else sucks. And when two of these people interact with each other, it's just like a non-stop, never-ending slew of 4-letter words being passed in the middle of town that nobody wants to listen to. And because this is a pretty big PvP focused game, you can't get away from these pricks. So it's either like you use Discord and you shut off the in-game voice chat, or you just don't and you never use it at all, or you have to put up with these dickheads. So that's one thing that really annoyed me about the beta so far. Another thing that I find really weird about a game that's so PvP focused is that there's no reason almost for me to want a PvP. So out of the 85 hours of game time that I have in New World, not a single minute of that was spent PvPing. Almost not a single minute. I mean, I did participate a little bit, but there's nothing that makes me want to go, oh hey, our bastion is being taken, and maybe we should go defend. I already have all the faction merchant gear. What do I get out of it? Literally nothing. There's no like special type of faction merchant stuff that you get from PvPing. There's no, I can't think of a single reason why I want to go defend Keep First Light, or why do I want to go defend Fort Reekwater. Just doing the Marauder quests that I get through the faction merchant, I maxed out my influence, I maxed out my tokens, I maxed out everything. And I didn't have to do any PvP at all. So what makes me want to go do it? I think that's one question that the developers really need to ask themselves, because as of right now, I don't see anything. One thing that really bugged me about some of the things inside the towns themselves is, I'm just going to use Monarch's Bluffs as an example, because I got my standing to level 27. I'm prominent with Monarch's Bluffs. I made Monarch's Bluffs my home. I was going to buy a house there. I have all my perks in Monarch's Bluffs, basically. But there's no way for me to have the crafting stations at the level I want the crafting stations to be at, unless I literally take control of the city and decide to upgrade them myself somehow. I don't know how that works exactly, but in order to get all the crafting stations at the level I needed them to be at, to be able to craft the things that I have the level to craft, I had to move from Monarch's Bluff to Windsward, and inside Windsward was like 90% of all the assholes that like the PvP. And I'm not saying I don't like PvPing, but I'm talking about all the toxic people. And so I went from a nice quiet town to this town where there's just tons of people all the time talking trash to each other just because I needed higher level crafting stations. I want there to be a way for me to upgrade the crafting stations for me to personally use in whatever town I want to be in. I don't know how that's gonna happen, but there should be a way, if somebody wants to spend the amount of time to do it, to be a way to, no matter what town they go to, if they spend the amount of time necessary, be able to use any level crafting station they want to. I think that would be something I would be very interested in personally, and I'm sure other people would too, because moving in this game sucks. Obviously there was a lot of exploits and stuff that they found along the way, but it didn't stop people from getting level 60 in like 1 or 2 days. There was lots of very prominent and famous streamers out there who literally a day and a half or 2 days after the game launched in beta were already level 60, and they were already grinding their way through the hardest content in the game that was offered in the beta. So I'm hoping that that is not going to be the case when the game launches at the end of August, as the game is right now, I don't think it's possible. I don't think they should launch the game in the end of August. I think there's way too much stuff that needs to be worked on, even though I want to play it again as soon as possible because I really enjoyed my time. I just think there's way too many things going on that need to be changed to be launched less than 30 days after the closed beta. So I guess we'll see what happens. That's going to do it for this video. I feel like I'm losing my voice. I know I probably repeated myself a little bit too much on some of this stuff. I'll go ahead and edit some of it, but anyways, I hope you guys appreciate this content. If you do, check out the description to this video. You're going to find links to my Discord. Come join us, come hang out, come talk about New World or any other game that you want to talk about. There will be a link in the description to the Discord, as well as my social media, and also a link to my Patreon where you can support the channel for $1.50 a month. I'd really appreciate it. I hope you had fun with New World. I know I did. I am looking forward to the release. However, there are a lot of things that I hope they change because they're so close, but yet so far away. And I don't want them to launch too fast and make the game just gone within a month because everybody has nothing left to do. Anyways, my name is Roger. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next adventure. Take care of yourself, everybody.